Dane is at a little bit of a disadvantage here at some of these conversations because we know what Dane thinks. So you can kind of understand how you're going to attack his thoughts, which I know is your whole game plan here, Nate. So I wanted to ask you, just before we dig into the guys individually, the way that Dane has these guys stacked up, which is Michael Mayer from Notre Dame, number 1, Dalton Kincaid from Utah, number 2, Luke Musgrave from Oregon State, number 3, Darnell Washington from Georgia, number 4, Tucker Kraft from South Dakota, number 5, and Sam Laporta from Iowa, number 6. Those are kind of the consensus 6 that we wanted to talk about. How does your board compare to Dane's with those 6 guys?
Same guy at number 1, Michael Mayer from Notre Dame. We'll talk about him, but don't overthink it, people. Just good player. Don't overthink it. But at number 2, this is kind of where I'm a little bit of an outlier. I'm actually kind of glad that Dane had this guy as his 3rd guy, and that's Luke Musgrave. I was tight end number 2. And that is it's a projection for a guy has been hurt his whole college career, doesn't have a ton of production, doesn't have a lot of games played, but we'll talk about him. But I have him at number 2, and I'll tell you why later. At 3, I do have Dalton Kincaid, like the player. Again, we'll talk about him in a sec. And then 4 and 5 is tough for me, because I'm going to say Darnell Washington, but I will say once we get to talking about Tucker Kraft, why that's going to be hard for me, because I am very bullish on Tucker Kraft. And then 6, I have Sam Laporta. And then after that, I know we're going to focus on that top 6, but then after that, there is one other guy that I have 7 that I'm pretty high on as well.
Is that Luke Schoonmaker from Michigan?
No, it's Josh Wiley from Cincinnati.
Interesting.
But I do like Schoonmaker. I do like those 2 as well. So those 2 are my other ones that I do like as kind of consolation prizes if you're looking outside the top 6.
All right, let's start with Michael Mayer from Notre Dame, who's the guy that you, in your mind, Nate, we just shouldn't overthink. Dane, he is your number 1 tight end in this class. He is a first-round pick, according to your big board. I want to say he's like, what, 18th, 19th on your board?
19th, I think, yeah.
Yeah. What about Michael Mayer makes him kind of a solidified first-round talent in your mind, which is not always a given at this position?
Yeah, there are not many weaknesses with Michael Mayer. And to borrow a Nate term, he's very useful. Very, very useful. 6'4.5", 250 pounds. This guy, you want to line him up in line, he can do that. You want to detach him, he can do that. Work the seam, work the middle of the field, he can do that. Run the full tight end route tree, crossers, angles. He does that really well. His favorite's the sail route. He thinks he's uncoverable with running the sail. So like, this is a guy that the moment he showed up in South Bend, he was the guy. You think about the pipeline Notre Dame has had at that position. 14 Notre Dame tight ends have been drafted since 2001.
That's insane.
That's
crazy.
Wild.
That's crazy. That's an insane stat.
And in 3 years, or in 30 games, it only took 30 games for Michael Mayer to become the all-time leader at tight end in catches, receiving yards, touchdown catches. So this guy has put up the production. And he has been, and even when Notre Dame did not have a go-to receiver the last 2 years, everyone knows that, the ball is going to number 87 and he's still making plays out there. So, and as a blocker, he's functional. I don't think he's overwhelming. I don't think he's a guy that's going to just overwhelm defenders at the point of attack, but he gets the job done. And, I was watching last night, had the 2001 NFL draft on in the background, just because I'm a sicko like that.
Good Lord, you are.
Yes. But Todd Heap was drafted 31 overall that year. And I'm watching these Arizona State highlights from back in the day. And
up his name.
Did you write his name down?
No, I'm comparing a different guy to Todd Heap.
Okay, all right.
And that is unbelievable. I was so excited for this, but I'm sorry. I cannot believe you brought Todd Heap.
You're in the big leagues here, buddy.
Dude, I was so ready to drop that name later. That was like when Deontay dropped Khalil Mack, and I was like, come on. Like, but sorry, Dave. But oh my God, I cannot believe you just brought up Todd Heap. I was just so excited to bring him up.
I'll be interested to see who you bring him up when you're talking about, because I'm watching these Heap highlights and I'm like, this kind of looks like Michael Mayer. And so I look at his testing, and it's like size almost identical, 40-yard dash almost identical, vertical almost identical, bench press almost identical. So I think there's a lot of and Todd Heap was a guy that I don't think we ever thought was a top 3 tight end in the league. And I like Michael Mayer. I don't think you're drafting him thinking he's ever going to be a top 3 tight end in the league, but he's a guy that, has made a few Pro Bowls, really productive. You know what you're getting week in, week out with this player. And I think that's really the appeal with Michael Mayer.
So that was going to be one of my questions, Nate, is that he doesn't have kind of the eye-popping athleticism of guys that we've seen drafted in the first round, really over the last 4, 5, 6 years, the traits that kind of get you drafted in this range. So if his ceiling as a receiver is a little bit lower, what about his game as a receiver, maybe some of the details of it, do you think elevates him among some of the other guys we're talking about here, Michael Mayer?
One thing first thing first, he's just naturally strong, which shows up in blocking, and I'll talk about blocking in a sec, but strong hands. And he has contested catches, which you can talk about separation stuff, but he does have that fantastic body control. And he has burst out of his routes. I wouldn't say he's explosive, but he does have that burst. When he comes out of a route, he comes out of it. And I think that's a underrated thing, especially when we talk about bigger athletes, is how they work out of routes, how they're able to sink and come out of it and make those catches and everything, and be friendly to the quarterback. So he doesn't have that elite athleticism, doesn't have that elite length, just good athlete. He's got 32-inch arms, all that, but he just has that feel as a route runner. He knows how to stay friendly, he knows how to work the zone, but he also is strong. So like when he is matched up with a safety or anything like that, he just overwhelms them because he's so strong and fluid as an athlete. So that body control, that hand-eye coordination. So every ball that goes his way, he's gonna give it the best chance possible to make the catch because he's so strong and has such good hand-eye coordination. Honestly, my high-end comparison for him, like where I see like top tier, I totally agree. Where you're looking at this guy as he sneaks in a couple Pro Bowls, maybe a handful, but really he's always just gonna be a good, steady guy, an auxiliary target for you, like a better blocking TJ Hawkinson. I think that is his high end kind of comparison where you don't mind him being at the point of attack. I know we're talking about receiving, but I do want to say about the blocking. It's kind of funny that Mayer has kind of gotten underrated as an athlete and a receiver and kind of overrated as a blocker.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how I feel about him. I think Dane agrees.
Yeah.
In blocking, he's naturally strong. It's technique stuff that he has to clean up. His hands get too wide, he gets too high, but it's kind of funny that people are like, hey, he comes in, he's an inline blocker right away. It's like, he needs some work. But underrated as an athlete, Dane mentioned this, he gets split out and they run receiver screens for him. They have him as a wing. They have him in the slot. They have him ISO'd up. You can ask this guy to do anything and he's going to be fine. He checks a lot of boxes. He is useful, like Dane said. So I just think he's clean. There's not a lot to really not to ding him on. Yes, he's not overwhelming in any category, but he's good in a lot of things.
You mentioned the receiver screen thing with Mayer. They did that against Clemson, and the game against Clemson that I watched yesterday, the things that stood out to me about him as a blocker is that the two best reps I saw of him, he didn't even use his hands at all. It was just pure power. So it's the technique stuff with Mayer does come up compared to just what he is physically as a blocker. So it's funny that you mentioned that. Dane, any other notes about Michael Mayer that you think are worth mentioning, considering when you're looking at him compared to some of the other tight ends in this class?
Yeah, no, I think I agree. Just to echo a lot of what Nate said. I mean, the first line of my report on Mayer is a quote from a scout who it said he's built out of vibranium. I mean, because that's the play strength that he has, and the body control he plays with. There's not a lot of wasted movement with his routes, and that's a key thing with him. Is he might not be as athletically gifted as some of these other guys we're talking about, or some of the top tight ends in the league. But everything is very controlled. All his movements, he doesn't strain as a route runner. And so that's so key with him. And then even though he doesn't create a ton of separation, he is very good in contested situations. It does not matter the traffic. He's wearing a defensive back, like a backpack. He will make the catch. And so I think that really echoes a lot of what Nate said.
Yeah.
Is there a fit with Michael Mayer that you have kept coming back to, Nate, as you've been looking at the first round that you like?
I think these fans are exhausted of me saying it, but the Packers. But really, if he fell in this area, and I actually think the team need and fit, it's the Chargers. I think that another auxiliary pass catcher. We talk about them needing a slot or a burner. Screw that. Get another guy that can play 40 snaps for you. And like we're saying, he's developing as a blocker. He's 2 tiers better than anyone that the Chargers have at the blocking at the tight end position right now. But also just giving a nice target over the middle for Justin Herbert. So that was one I kind of liked. And it kind of fits for his value where I think he should go in the draft. So I kind of like that fit.
I was looking at.
Sorry, two teams to keep on the radar there. I think the Cowboys
Ooh, yeah.
They've done a lot of work on him, and I think he fits with what they like. A guy that can block, but a guy that's going to help the offense move the sticks.
Mhm.
And then the Bengals.
Oh, yeah.
Mayer is from that area. He grew up thinking he was going to play Kentucky basketball. And there's a lot of connections there. Obviously, the tight end is a position the Bengals will address in the draft. It's just a matter of where. Is it the first round, second round, third round? But I think if Mayer makes it to 26, 28, that range, I don't think he's getting past both of those teams.
You don't think the Bengals are going into the season with Irv Smith as their tight end?
Yeah.
Well, 40 stats for him.
They did just bring back Drew Sample. So
Drew Sample too. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh my God, Bengals getting him would be fantastic. That'd be really good.
I don't want to give it away because it's a number I was going to bring up during the draft show when we talked about the Packers potentially drafting a tight end. But if you add up the career receiving yards of the players currently on the Packers roster, it would have ranked 24th among tight ends in the NFL last year for 1 year in 2022. It's like 437.
Wow.
All right.
Unbelievable.
So
poor Jordan Love.
So I think it goes without saying the Packers would probably use a player at tight end, and Michael Mayer might be that guy. Yeah. You guys mentioning the Bengals with Mayer is funny because when I was thinking about skill sets and fits and guys I would like to see land in certain places, the one that I kept coming back to was Dalton Kincaid from Utah landing with Cincinnati. And Dane, he's the second tight end on your board. What about Dalton Kincaid do you feel like kind of separates him from the guys below Mayer?
I think you could make the case that Dalton Kincaid, and I almost mentioned this on our wide receiver show, but I saved it for this show. You could make the case he is the best pure pass catcher in this draft. Everyone, wide receivers included, running backs included, everyone included, the best pure pass catcher. He has that type of ability where he can isolate the football, go up, make the catch. The catch radius is outstanding. His ball skills are unreal. After the catch, he's so good at transitioning from catcher to runner. It's very seamless for him. And I just throw on the USC tape. 16 targets, 16 receptions. USC had, and USC's defense terrible this year. But I still
they also got cooked by Michael Mayer, didn't they? USC had a rough year against tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, just watch
a lot of highlights.
The Cotton Bowl and Tulane, Tyjae Sharp or Spears. I do that all the time, running all over them. But something I look at with receivers and tight ends, it's not an exact science, but I like comparing their career touchdown catches to drops. To me, that's a good ratio of just understanding, what kind of player they are. And if they have more drops than touchdown catches in their career, a little bit of a red flag for me. It's not like, they're not going to be a good player, but it's something I pay attention to. Dalton Kincaid in his career, a 35-4 touchdown catch to drop ratio. And that's as good as you're going to find for a tight end. So elite in that area. Just a big fan of this player. Obviously, he's a lighter player. He's 245 pounds. He's only going to give you so much when you give him blocking responsibilities. So, it's a little bit of we get so much. There's so much talk about, the debate about how these top tight ends rank. They're all different. If you want a certain type of tight end, you're going to draft Michael Mayer. If you want more of the pass catcher, a guy that is essentially going to be a slot receiver for you, then, Dalton Kincaid is going to be more of your flavor. So these are all ice cream flavors. It's just a matter of the type of flavor you want that day and the type that's going to fit your offense. So I think it's important to include that as we talk about these tight ends.
When I was thinking about Cincinnati, that's why I was thinking about Dalton Kincaid. Hayden Hurst played about 300 snaps outside in the slot last year. So if you're just looking for a tertiary receiving option, then that could take advantage of the one-on-one matchups that you're creating for him. It seems like among this group, Dalton Kincaid might be one of those best options. And what he can do as a receiver, that USC tape, I mean, that slot fade he caught against USC on the right sideline is just like not a lot of tight ends doing that shit. That just doesn't happen very often. But Nate, I know what you like and I know what you look for at the position. So I'm assuming that one of the reasons maybe you're a little bit more pessimistic about Dalton Kincaid is that at 245, he's not giving you the oomph that you're looking for in some aspects of playing tight end.
245 at the combine, always listed below 240 in his career. And no, that's exactly it. And it's not to ding the player. He's awesome. Like his catching skills are fantastic. It's just more of that classic grading scale where the Y is going to have a little bump over the F only guy.
Especially for you, buddy.
Oh, I'm sticking with it. It's like, all right, I'm not always right, but at least I'm trying to be consistent with this. But he is dynamic, like Dane said. And I said this on a call with Dane maybe a month or two ago, and I wasn't trying to say like it's 1-to-1, but Kincaid can do this one thing that I love, where he gets vertical after he catches the ball. So if he catches a stick route, he can drop step really quickly and get north. And I compared him to Wes Welker. I know totally different players, but Wes Welker is the best I've ever seen at doing that, where he catches a ball and he unlocks his hips and gets north. And Kincaid can do that at 240. And that is right there and there. That's pretty sweet. You can see a lot of his basketball background. Like this is a Vegas guy. He went to a high school 10 minutes down the road from me, and he was a really good basketball player. And you can see he truly rebounds the basketball, or rebounds the football. Like he goes over the middle. He has a catch against USC, I believe it was, where he's catching a seam ball and he high points it and dunks over the guy. And it's like, he does that consistently. High points the ball over and over and over.
And it's very natural. Natural.
He's an athlete. And what you talked about, the touchdowns and drops, I thought you were going to bring it up. Like the one stat that I came across this entire draft cycle that I thought was hilarious was Kincaid originally went to the University of San Diego, not San Diego State, University of San Diego. He was a Toro. And his freshman year, he had 24 catches, but he had 11 touchdowns. It's like, that's absurd. Yeah. It's like Mark McGuire in 1998, like having 70 home runs and like 20 singles or whatever he had. Like it's just, that's exactly what it felt like. But even though I do think he's truly just an F only tight end, I have kind of adapted my thinking or become softer on this line of thinking, not in a bad way, but just I've opened up my mind. I've expanded my mind on this, that if we're looking at slot only receivers and everything, why a slot only tight end, or a tight end that can line up in the slot, that's not a bad thing anymore. No. If this guy has the ability, this guy being Kincaid, has the ability to catch the ball and win against a DB, a slot, or a safety, if they line up in nickel, the defense does, then that's fine. Who gives a shit if it's a receiver or a tight end? It's a pass catcher. And honestly, it can do more. It can be a super power slot. Like I say, who cares if it's receiver? It's positionless football. And so I've kind of opened up my line of thinking with that. And it's funny that Dane said these guys are different flavors of ice cream. How I describe Kincaid is I look at him as a good cherry on top for an offense. So like the Bengals would be a great one, and especially if they're trying to transition from Tower Boyd. Once his contract runs up, okay, Kincaid's our slot guy now. It doesn't matter for 12 or 11, whatever we want to be. So I just really, really do like his game as far as a pass catcher, and even as a blocker. Yeah, he's limited because of size and length and all that, but he's smart and he tries hard, and that matters. He goes to the right guy. There's a clip I saw of him. I really want to say it was against Oregon State, so I'm sorry. It was 2 months ago. I'm trying to recall off the top of my head, but Oregon State, the defense, it was near the goal line, ran like a late blitz, a late stunt, and he did not hesitate one iota. Like just right away, just his eyes were perfect. His footwork had no fat on it. So yeah, he's always going to be not always, but he's going to be overmatched most of the time if he has to block and lie. But Kincaid at least has the ability and the smarts to at least maximize what you ask him to do, which is very, very important when he transitions to the next level.
I was talking to an offensive coordinator this week, just going through some of the offensive guys, and he preferred Kincaid to Michael Mayer. And it's because he just thinks he has an elite trait. If you're going to draft a guy this high in the draft, if you're going to spend a first-round pick on a tight end, does he have an elite trait? And he thought that Dalton Kincaid's pass catching was elite compared to some of these other guys, and even guys we've seen come out over the last couple of years. But when you have a guy that maybe is a little bit smaller, he's going to have to win with athleticism and pass catching, Dane. Are we a little bit worried that we have no testing numbers on him whatsoever as a result of a pretty significant injury history?
And we have to mention it. We have to, there's a reason why we haven't gotten any testing from him, and it's the injury factor. There's an extra letter on his draft tag up on the draft board, and that will factor into his evaluation. But talking to teams, it doesn't sound like it's something that's going to really drop him on draft day.
Good.
Reading this text straight from a trainer with an NFL team. DK's injury, again, it was at the end of the season, in rehab process, would be a question for mini camps, but not a long-term concern at this point. So I don't think it's something that is going to drop him at all. I think, we mentioned the Chargers with Mayer. I really like the fit with Kincaid with the Chargers.
I like that more. Just because more juice. Give me the juice.
Give it to
Still got a
Herbert.
block.
Yeah.
Still have a need. Him
Yeah.
and Gerald Everett. Yeah, let's just do that.
Like I mean, in a lot of ways, he's a better Everett. I think. Everett can't find the end zone where Kincaid. He had at least 8 touchdown catches. I think
Way better
every
football
year.
player.
Right. So this is a guy that upgrades your passing game in a big way, and so it won't be surprising if he ends up going in the top 20 because teams want to get more dynamic on offense, and he helps you do that.
Especially in a world where there aren't receivers available. Because like Nate said, if you just need other pass catching options, I keep going back to that Vikings trade for TJ Hawkinson. When you're looking at the landscape and saying, what can we do to just be better on offense when we have a true number 1 receiver and we just need someone who could take advantage of matchups? It doesn't fucking matter what position he plays.
Right.
And do more offenses start going to that line of thinking? And does Dalton Kincaid fall into that bucket?
Well, Kincaid and then next year, Brock Bowers, these guys that, yes, quote unquote, tight end, F only tight end. But like I said, again, like when we're getting to that positionless stuff and defenses are matching with nickel anyways, even if teams that have normal 12 personnel, quote unquote, 2 blocking tight ends and 12 teams are matching with nickel. So let's just get the best players out there. Who gives a shit? And I think that's Kincaid has really kind of been a part of like a change in the line of thinking I've had what the Chiefs had done with, of course, with Kelsey. Kelsey's his own animal. But as far as just expanding how you can use offense, Evan Ingram, how the Jaguars used him, that expanded my kind of line of think of like, okay, coaches are a lot better at using these guys and understanding what they are. The one stat I came across, and this is why I did have some reservations, is because of the weight, is just even tight ends weighing 245 pounds or less, only 4 of 38 tight ends that weighed 245 pounds or less had a season of 800 yards or more since 2002. And that's where it's like, yes, get this receiving tight end, There isn't a lot of proof of this. It's Jordan Reed, Dalton Schultz, Kellen Winslow, and Owen Daniels. And Owen Daniels is actually my comparison for Dalton Kincaid. So kind of funny in that sense. But it's a bit of an outlier. It's not like a true, never had happened before, but you just have to keep that in mind. But I do think the NFL landscape is more conducive for Dalton Kincaid than it was maybe 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
What I like about both of these guys is it's not, you don't have to talk yourself into what they are as receivers. Nope. Number 1 and number 2, Michael Mayer and Dalton Kincaid in yards per route run among tight ends nationally last year with more than 20% of the snaps, according to PFF. And they were the best receivers on their own team.
Yes.
Even within their offense. I was watching the Florida game and Dalton Kincaid's getting bracketed in the red zone. They're double teaming him consistently. And that's the type of stuff you want to see when you really are going to rely on these guys to be receiving weapons.